Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Kilee and you are with Kilee Nichols. Today I'm excited to have a special guest. I always love guests. It's so fun to get to talk with amazing women who are doing amazing things. And today I have Angela Lee Gieras. Is that right?
Yeah, that's
okay,
it.
I got it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here.
Super glad to have you. So Angela is like many of the women on this podcast who have done really great things, and then you've transitioned into doing even more great things. And so I'm really excited to hear about your journey. But I'm going to let her introduce herself. But she started in banking and moved into theater and also into coaching and leadership. And so I'm excited to hear all of your stories. So with that long intro, let me have you just introduce yourself and tell our audience about you.
Yeah, I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I went to the University of Florida undergrad. My junior year of college, I was introduced to theater for the first time. I didn't grow up with any kind of arts background at all. And decided to stay an extra semester at school to get a minor in theater, but I had a finance major.
Okay.
And so I worked in a bank in college, and that was kind of the natural line to me of what I was supposed to do. I think I loved theater, but I knew that my parents might have a heart attack if I decided to leave and go do that. Also didn't have any understanding of any jobs in the theater other than an actor or a designer or somebody like that, the people who work backstage. And so went into banking, was recruited by several banks, and went to Birmingham, Alabama, met my husband at my very first job out of college. We both were in banking, ended up getting transferred back to my hometown. We got married. And then I was volunteering at theaters. That's how it kind of started.
You got to do a little on the side.
Yeah, and what I found was I was the most happy I ever was when I was volunteering and working full time. And then I began to realize that the volunteering was what was making me happy, not necessarily the working. And then my husband had an opportunity in another community. I spent about 5 years in the bank. At the point where I really stepped out of banking, I was at a place where I was the female lender on the floor that I was on. I was a commercial banker. Every other lender was male. The only other women on the floor were assistants. And I was kind of identified as the person they were going to kind of promote up, and I would have this great career, and I was desperately not happy about it, and kept getting promoted. And then my husband got this opportunity to go to another community. I ended up interviewing with a couple of banks, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I interviewed every arts organization in the community we were moving to, and this guy picked up the phone, mentor to this day. He was the artistic director of a very small theater company in Greenville, South Carolina. And at the end of the phone call, when he was describing the arts community in Greenville, he said, I do have a job, but I don't think you're really qualified for it. It's as a development director, and we're finishing up a capital campaign, but I don't know that it's the right position for you. I got off the phone. I looked at that as a challenge, and I wrote the most persuasive letter I've ever written, probably in my entire career, to him, saying, I'm a commercial banker, and it's just like being a development director at a theater company, which I knew nothing about. Took that first job, bought 2 books, read them cover to cover. Became a development director, started doing what was in the book, and kind of learned along the way. And then, went to graduate school because in the theater, if you weren't raised as a theater person, you kind of don't have that same level of credibility because people know all the plays they've ever done in their entire life and that they've ever seen. And I didn't have that. So I went to SMU, and they have a really cool dual master's degree. And I have my MBA and an MA in arts administration. Again, this was like the hedge, right? So MBA, if this theater thing doesn't work out,
You
I'll
have
still have a
something.
business degree.
Yeah.
And then ended up going to work at a theater in Dallas. And really my off-road moment that really transitioned my whole thought about work and how everything was going is, again, I was doing great work and I was A++ on my job, and then I had a child. And everything that I thought was super important about work became really the back burner, and she became the priority.
Yeah.
And about 2 years into having her, I decided to take a step back. I was really very ambitious and thought I was going to lead an organization. Had actually gotten an offer when my daughter was really little to lead an organization, and ended up turning it down because I just was like, I don't think I can balance all this right now. And spent about 5 years outside the field of theater. And I think the biggest lesson I have about that is I really left theater for all the right reasons. I want to devote more time to my family. I really want this to be something that I'm great at. And I felt like I couldn't balance the motherhood and the work thing, the ambitious woman thing altogether. And so I went to a nonprofit consulting firm that had a lot more flexibility, a lot more kind of work-life balance, and found 3 months into it that, oh, wow, the part of me that I love the most, that I connected with, was I'm a theater person and I love being in the theater. It makes me so happy to see people create things. And this field is a hard field to break into. It's even harder to break back into. All of this occurred around 2008 when the economy hit the skids. There were really no jobs. And so I spent a few years outside the field. It was kind of a gut-wrenching realization to say, oh, I did it for all the right reasons, but the lesson has been heart-wrenching and really made me realize what is important. That lesson is a lesson I tell a lot of people who are considering leaving the field.
Yeah.
Because it is very hard to get back in. And I've had lots of young people who go, oh, I'm going to go make $5,000 more to go up to a different type of arts organization. And I always say, you're a theater person and you will miss this. And I hope that you're successful, and I hope that everything works out. But please know, the lesson I learned is that if you're a theater person, you're a theater person. So with that, I became the executive director of KC Rep after kind of transitioning back into the theater. Really that opportunity was kismet. I have a dear friend of mine from graduate school who had been recruited for this job. He called me and he said, hey, I'm not interested in this role in Kansas City. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah. And so he connected me to the recruiter, and that ended up being the job that I ended up getting my first leadership opportunity. So that's kind of the very long version of my history. And then, most recently has been the journey of leadership development for me. And it wasn't something that I said, oh, wow, I'm going to become a leader, and then I'm going to become a leadership coach, or I'm going to become a leader and I'm going to share with other people how to do this. None of that was intentional, really. Yeah. For me, it's really been about learning. So one of my core values is learning and curiosity, and being curious about people, being curious about how things could work and how they could do better. Yeah. And through a program at the Kansas Leadership Center, I ended up doing a lot of kind of leadership development work and started introducing that at KC Rep, saw the changes it could make internally, and then really began to go, okay, how could this be helpful to other arts organizations? Because we don't invest enough time and energy into leadership development, professional development, building skills for our employees. And so I wanted to be able to do that. And that has been so fulfilling to me. That part of the job has been so fulfilling. And now I go around the country and do leadership development and organizational development work for other arts organizations.
I love that.
Yeah.
there's like so many parts that
Yeah.
I thought, oh my gosh, I want to ask about that, or I'm amazed at like you said, it's a long story, but like there's so many times where you pivoted or like something changed. And I think, women, there's so many women who experience that, whether it's leaving the workforce or I took the steady job that I felt like would be like banking. You felt like, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, but you were called to something else, and then again and again and again. So, I'm just excited and interested about like the courage and the steps that you took each time. As you think about like all these different, I don't know, I guess maybe it's like forks in the road that you've kind of taken. I'm interested in some of the more of the lessons that you learned. I love that you decided to be a mom and stay home and then have learned that lesson and passed it on. Is there other, moments that you can remember where you're like, oh, well, that was a lesson learned?
I think one of the biggest leadership lessons is, and you and I were talking about this before, is when you come into leadership, particularly when you are a high achiever in a doer position, right? You're making things, you're hitting the goals, you've got, when you step into that leadership role, everything changes as far as perspective. And I think it's a very hard transition for people who are high achievers, because you go from having these individual achievements that you've done your entire career to it's a group achievement. It's how do you motivate other people to want to achieve? How do you get people to buy into your vision of a company, your vision for the type of culture that you think could work best?
You're talking about me right now.
Yeah. I mean, and
lots of people, right? That's what's crazy is it happens to so many people. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think it's a hard transition.
It's so
and
hard.
I think so many of us don't give ourselves a break of how long that takes to learn. And that the people are the thing almost every time.
Yeah.
I say to our staff at Casey Rep, and people have varying opinions about this, but the culture is them.
Yeah.
It's not me. I'm one person. Each person is a part of our culture. They create the culture that they want to work around. We can set parameters that hopefully will make that culture successful and help it be positive and encouraging and empathetic and welcoming. But in the end, it's everybody's daily decision of how they want to show up for work and whether that is in the way that promotes the culture that we're trying to do. So, leadership and people and understanding how to work with people's quirks, understanding how each person is motivated very differently. I think at the very beginning, I was kind of doing a one-size-fits-all.
Yeah.
And I also tend to be a fairly direct person. I came from Florida directly. I came from the community I was raised in.
Yeah.
Very direct community. If you need something, you say it. If you don't like something, you say it. Coming to the Midwest, where
I'm like, that is not how I grew up.
Every single person is like the Midwest nice, where you don't really say exactly. You're much more kind and generous about the way you're trying to get people to realize what you're really saying. Was a huge learning curve for me, and then also realizing that as a leader, you can't be as direct as you want to be sometimes. You do need people to kind of find their place. And that's one of the brilliant things I think about coaching is that skill was not a skill that I when I took my coaching class, I didn't think I was going to become a certified coach. I didn't think that was like a path for me. What I did it for is because I felt like it was going to be helpful to my management style. Yeah. And it has been, because instead of giving people the answers, I help them find their answers. And
that's a skill. That's something you have
it's
to
hard.
know how to do.
And it's also because sometimes you go, oh, I think I know the right answer. And instead you're like, how do you think it should happen? I just had a conversation with a staff member yesterday where they're like, what do you want me to do? And I said, how about you come up with a proposal and you tell me what you think is the best idea? and then we'll discuss it. Because I want to empower people to make great decisions and not think that they can't.
Yeah.
They can. They are smart, capable people. That's why we hire them. So.
Yeah. Did you ever see yourself doing what you're doing now when you started years ago, like when you were in banking? Did you see yourself ever leaving? Like when you were in theater, did you see some of these transitions coming?
Honestly, one of my husband and I's big ideas about life is that your happiness in life is kind of in direct proportion of what your expectation of life is, right? So, no, I didn't think any of this. I didn't know any of this. I grew up pretty lower middle class. Grew up with two parents who were not college educated. Never in a million years thought I would have 2 master's degrees. I never could have imagined having a partner like my husband who gets me in this deep, meaningful way. My parents were divorced. His parents were divorced. We didn't envision that you could make it work and figure it out, and that, yes, it's hard, but it's also like when it's the right person, it's the right person. And then, certainly... and I know so many people are searching for this, doing the thing that lights me up every day, going in the theater, even though, I say this in my bio, is I have a head for business, but the heart of an artist. Yeah. And going in the theater is like so magical to me, even today. Almost 20 years later, of being in the industry, not just going to school, but being and going in that dark room and seeing people do work, seeing artists create something together, all of the work, all the hours of pain and suffering and hard, difficult decisions, and being able to see it entertain people is so cool. And it is the coolest job, truly.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just was getting chills because I think we want to know what's coming or what we can achieve. And I think, like you just said, like we couldn't possibly know what we could achieve now or like when we were younger or things. And so just this idea that like it can be so much better than you would have ever thought. Like you can achieve so much more. You can have this thing you're so passionate about, or you can discover something like leadership or things that you're even more passionate about that you just never would have even thought to go after. I don't know. I think there's like something really exciting and wonderful about that.
I do too. I mean, I also think one of my, and it's not a philosophy, I would just say in theater, there is, and this really comes out of improv, which I was in an improv group when I was in
that would be
undergrad.
Nightmare.
And the first rule of improv is to say yes. Yeah. So somebody presents you with a scenario and you can't go, no, that didn't happen. You just have to go with whatever they present to you.
Yeah.
And I view my life like that.
I think that's really, really
which is
perfect.
Boy, there are a lot of weird things that have happened to me, and most of them I just go, yeah, I'll try it. I mean, this podcast, a friend sends me an email. It's like, hey, I want to introduce you two to each other. And I'm like, yes, I would love that. That would be so fun.
It's true. She did.
Yeah.
And we didn't know each other, and we're like, okay, well, we're going to figure it out, and this is going to be exciting to connect. Yeah. But yeah, I think I often come from like a place of fear or anxiety or like apprehension, which is part of why the fact that I'm where I am is just mind blowing to me, because you have to say yes to opportunities in order to get anywhere, but sometimes that can be really scary. But yeah, I think if you can say yes and then let it take you or go wherever you're led, I think that was my next question. I was thinking is just, how did you get the courage to make some of these changes or move to Dallas for a master's degree? Like, did you have an example of somebody else who did that? Was it your husband and your relationship? Like, what made you feel like, I'm going to turn this down and do this instead because that's what my heart says to do? Like, what was your guiding?
I think there's a few things. I think I was raised in a pretty transitional family, like meaning we moved a lot.
Yeah.
I went to 12 schools by the age of 10th grade.
Yeah.
And that didn't count schools that I went to multiple times, right?
Okay.
So I just really, I was comfortable with change. I was comfortable with like just trying something different, and not purely because of the way I was raised, family of origin stuff.
Yeah.
And but I will say the power of having a partner who encouraged me when we were moving to Greenville, and he had already transitioned. He was already leading an office there. No one in the bank knew that my husband had moved, because we were like, we want to try it out and we don't want any pressure. And if people find out that you've gone, then they're going to know and they'll stop promoting me. And so at that point, it was really him. He was like, you've got to do something you love to do. My husband doesn't feel that urge. He doesn't even think it's important to do the thing you love to do.
That's fascinating.
It is. It is.
Okay. You can exist that way.
That's such a difference.
Yeah. Speaking of differences between people, that's very different.
And he's motivated by so many different things.
Yeah.
He's a mortgage banker. So he's motivated by helping people achieve their first home. He's motivated by money. He's motivated, and those things never have motivated. The money doesn't motivate me.
Yeah.
What motivates me is hopefully doing the thing I love to do, being able to help other people, support other people, boost other people up, and hopefully leave a place better than I find it. Right. And so, I would say that my husband is my secret sauce in so many ways. And then, he has moved for me like 4 or 5 times. I've moved for him once.
That's incredible.
And by the way, he's super successful, and he's been successful in every city we've ever lived in. Most of the cities, he's more successful every time, but he has to rebuild his business every single time we move. So I can't, he's the perfect partner for me.
Yeah.
And he's a great dad, and he's just a good guy.
I love that.
Yeah.
Sounds like you guys have both sacrificed for each other, but I think I'm hearing that every time you made a transition, you did sacrifice something. Like you left something behind, you lost it, and no guarantee that the next thing is going to work out, but it totally has.
Yeah. I would say the hardest transition for us was probably this last one, coming to Kansas City, because for 3 years we lived near my family, and it was the only time during our life together that we have lived near family.
Yeah.
So every holiday was hosted at my house. Everybody's birthday was hosted at my house. And then to come here where we knew no one was a really big transition. And also, again, one of these lessons is my first year leading, I was like, I'm just going to devote my time to work. And then a year later, I realized I have no friends. And female friendship in particular has been this guiding light for me. It is a ritual in my life of like, how do I bring really wonderful women together, and realizing like, yes, you can devote your life to work, and then you can just be sort of sad and not have friends. So I would never do that again.
That's fascinating.
And I tell people that, if you move to another community, do not put friendship on the back burner.
Yeah.
All you will do is prolong how long you do not have friends.
Yeah. It's lonely.
Yeah.
And as women, we don't thrive that way.
Yeah. No.
That's a great lesson.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for making that a priority? I feel like that's not something I prioritize right now. Like in my season, it's kids and work, and that is my season, and that's okay because I don't have time to be lonely, frankly. But you do need you have your friends you need to call and things, but for this season it sounds like that's been a priority and needs to be.
For me, really this particular situation started when my daughter was really little. So my daughter was diagnosed with food allergies when she was really little, and I began really cooking. Like I cooked before that, but
Yeah.
it was more like shake and bake or whatever.
Yeah.
But when she was little, I started taking cooking classes and started learning how to make really beautiful, good food.
That's amazing.
And I took a cooking class, found it's called the Perfect Fall Dinner Party by Sir Latab. It was a class in Dallas, and I hosted a women's dinner party, and it has become like the thing in my life that is the most joyful, most amazing day of my entire year is the day that I host this. It went from 8 people the first year. The third year I had 22 women because I could not cut the list. and it's a gourmet meal. And I cook every single thing.
word.
I make every single thing. So going from that to being a leader now,
Yeah.
I now have a couple of things I cook that are super easy. And Sunday I just hosted a brunch. I had 8 women in my home. I was introducing a new woman to town to a lot of other women because again, I really believe that in order for people to love this community, they have to be introduced to other people who are similar or people who they would have something in common with. And so to me about it, my focus is make it easy, figure out how to do it, and invite people and they'll show up.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I love this. It was that, and now it's this, but it's still serving this purpose. And look at all the things you've learned through the years that make it be like, oh, I can totally do it easy now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were talking before this, and I was saying, there's just, it's hard to learn things. It's hard to take the time to learn things or to go through the experiences where you learn the lessons, because in the moment, I'm not good at this yet, or I'm learning this, and I'm going to make mistakes along the way. But then I look at your story and I'm hearing all the places you've arrived at, right? With air quotes, because we never arrive. But there's so many lessons that now you're deploying to other women. And so honestly, for me, that gives me a lot of okay, my lessons that I'm learning maybe won't be lost, or, maybe that's how you ended up in the place you are now, where it's I want to just share this knowledge and help other people.
Yeah. I think especially as female leaders, I personally did not have a lot of female mentors. And so that has become a passion of mine, is that if I can help a young woman in my field have confidence, be able to go through a search, be able to do that, be able to get an executive position, I will tell you the most joyful I've been in the last probably 5 years was helping a woman get her dream job. And the day she called me and told me she got the offer, I mean, I was jumping up and down in my living room as if it had happened to me.
Probably more so.
Yeah. And in some ways it was more joyful. It was because when it's for you, you have such anxiety related to it. Yeah. You want it so much. And so there's just a different, all it was pure joy for this other person to have succeeded and to have achieved what she deserved and what she wanted more than anything. And so, yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. I think women supporting women. I think when I was younger, I didn't realize how important that would become to me.
Yeah.
In my bio, I also put that I'm a collector of interesting people. It is really the sole collection of my life is people that I just find interesting. And many of them are not people who are similar to me at all. Yeah. Right. But being able to even look past a first glance at a person or a first moment of tension that you may have with a person and go, no, that's a person I really want to know. Yeah. And I want to devote time to that person. And I want to find a way to spend time with them. And that has just worked, I think, in my favor. Some of that's 30 minutes for a drink. Some of that is, having a pedicure date with a girlfriend where I was going to do it anyway. And then some of it is having people over at your house and just going, hey. I think I'm really lucky. My husband's also super social. Yeah. So we kind of have, we joke that we're at our best when we're entertaining people because we just go into team mode and we just get it done. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to your younger self or to women maybe who have yet to make some of these transitions or jumps that you've made? I always want women who listen to say, oh boy, how could I do that too though? Like, I don't have this that she has or that, but like, what advice would you give even your younger self?
Yeah. I think each time I do something super scary, and look, there's a lot of them. I mean, when you jump into anything new, it's just scary, and you don't know, you don't want to fall on your face, and you certainly don't want to do it publicly. Each time I do something, the reward of doing it, even when it's taken me years to do it, or is like, just go do the thing, like just go do it. Because I've been held back a lot by like, oh, it's not the right timing, or I can't do it right now, or I've got a project that I'm trying to finish up, and I've been trying to finish it up during the entire pandemic, and I'm like, I am in the final draft of a document, and I have postponed it for a month, and I'm like, why? Just go do it, right? And the reward at the end of that, I had a coach during my first year at Kilee Rep who said, I was trying to make a really hard decision. I was making a staffing change. And she said, don't think about what you have to do right now. Think about what happens after. And that is where you have to live. You can't live in the hard part. Yeah. You have to live in the vision of the future. And that's such great advice, especially when you have to make a hard decision at work.
Yeah, I'm thinking of 10 right now that I've made, and it's like, boy, if I would have thought of it that way. Yeah. I always think like, I like the phrase of, the only way, to
the other side is through it.
The other side is through it, right? Yeah. Basically, and it's like, but the through it is what we don't want to do. But like, oh my gosh, what's on the other side? Like, totally worth it. Yeah. Which is what I love that you love banking. I love that you weren't a theater kid for all the years to say I'm qualified to be in theater, which, but there's so many industries where that could be the case. And it's like, no, this is where I belong. Yeah. I'm going to find a way to be there. Yeah. So
my roommate from college one time, like she said, I always tell people about my friend Angela who lives her bliss. Like, I'm like, what a great endorsement,
nice reputation.
And that I really did kind of go my own path. Yeah. Like it wasn't a path I knew. It wasn't a path. It was filled with lots of potholes and a lot of mess, but it's been also this like joyful thing of finding something that you really love to do. My mom is 74, and she's still on the quest to find the things she's meant to do. And I recognize how lucky I am. Yeah. Right. How fortunate I found it, and it was accidental and unintentional, but there were multiple times where I kind of turned away from it, not just in college, but after college, going into banking and then going off road after I had my daughter, but I always came back. Yeah. Because that's who I am. Right.
Yeah. Well, and you started that discomfort maybe a lot earlier than your mom or our moms or whatever. And so I just think I love the just go do it. Like, there's power in just starting now. And that's what I always am like, tomorrow's going to come either way. You better start today.
Yeah. So that's right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and all of your great insight.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
Where can people find you? Is there somewhere they can follow you?
Sure. You can follow Kilee Rep.
Definitely.
So KileeRep.org is our website, but we also are on Instagram and Facebook, and you can learn about shows at Kilee Rep. And then my consulting business is inspiredartsmanagement.com. And that is on Facebook and Instagram, but it's not as active. And then I'm on Facebook. I'd love to connect with wonderful women. So
awesome. Yeah. We'll put your information in the show notes and make sure people can find you. So thanks again. Yeah. And have a great rest of the day.
Been a pleasure. Thanks.
Thanks for listening today to With Kilee Nichols. I hope that today you felt empowered to take one more step towards living the best version of you. Tune in next week for another episode, and in the meantime, you can find us elsewhere on the internet. You can find me on Instagram at Kilee Nichols and at Nickel and Suede. You can also find us at nickelandswade.com. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.